I woke up to find myself being reprimanded in the Office of Academic Affairs. Agnes Fairfax, well done. You've even learned how to have a teenage romance now, Mr. Cargill, the head of academic affairs, said sarcastically. You entered the gifted class with top 3 grades in your year, and now you're nearly at the bottom. The gray-haired Mr. Cargill, well into his 50s, stood before me with a pointer, lecturing away. I kept my head down, silently listening to his admonishment, but my thoughts drifted far away. In my previous life, I had rebelled against the school's rigid rules forbidding teenage relationships. I had brazenly confronted Mr. Cargill right here, angering him so much that he called my parents. My parents had tried to persuade me to break up, but to defend what I thought was love, I had a falling out with them on the spot. Even if I end up homeless, I'll never bow to you, I had declared defiantly. Distraught, my parents had a car accident on their way home and passed away. From that day on, I lived in endless guilt and regret, ultimately ruining my entire life. Given a second chance, I only wished for them to live to a ripe old age where I could see them. As Mr. Cargill picked up his mug to wet his throat, I apologized sincerely. Sir, I was wrong. I can break up right now. Please don't upset yourself over this. What did you just say? He was visibly taken aback. I said I shouldn't have focused on a teenage romance, disappointing the school's trust and kindness, I said, keeping my eyes lowered submissively. You can punish me however you see fit. I won't have any objections. He blew on the hot water in his mug, his tone a bit uncertain, however I see fit. His attitude convinced me that he must have understood the little tricks I had done on the test papers. How about, I suggested proactively, I write a pledge to get into Cambridge next year. He squinted at me for a while, and if you don't? Then I'll keep trying. I won't rest until I get into Cambridge. I swore, pointing to the sky. All right, he said, taking an A4 paper from the printer, his mood visibly improved. Write it then, sign and stamp it when you're done. I obediently leaned on the desk, wrote the pledge, and pressed my fingerprint on the ink pad. Sir, is this okay? I handed him the paper. He glanced at it and nodded with satisfaction. Thank you, sir. Do you still need to call my parents? I asked cautiously. He waved his hand. Given your good attitude in admitting your mistake, we'll hold off on that for now. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief and left the Office of Academic Affairs. After walking a few steps, I saw a slender, upright figure passing by me expressionlessly. It was Tyrone Wakefield, the head boy of the gifted class and a true academic star. A flash of inspiration struck me, and I quickened my pace to grab his arm. He flinched as if scalded, frowning at me. What is it? Can I borrow your phone? I gestured with my left hand against my ear, mimicking answering a call. Our school has a strict policy of confiscating mobile phones upon return from holidays. I wanted to call my mom, and Tyrone Wakefield was the only student granted the privilege of keeping his phone. I don't have it, he tried to pull away from me. Stop lying. If you don't lend it to me, I'll tell everyone Mr. Cargill favors you, I glared at him, eyes wide. He looked down at me from his height, while I tilted my head back, unflinchingly meeting his gaze. Finally, under my persistent stare, he relented. As I hid in a floral alcove to make the call, Tyrone kept watch nearby. Agnes, darling, why the sudden call home? My mom's voice came through the speaker, warm and familiar. Tears suddenly sprang to my eyes, beyond my control. It had been a full decade since our last argument, and I hadn't heard her voice since. Just missed you, that's all. I tried to keep my tone light, not wanting Mom to sense anything amiss. Mom's laughter trickled through the phone. Tell Mummy the truth now. Have you run out of pocket money? No, I have enough, I chuckled through my tears. I just suddenly craved your Wellington steak. But you'll be home for the holidays soon, won't you? Mom chided playfully. I'll make it for you then. Just then, I caught sight of my boyfriend, Zach Welland. He was heading towards the Office of Academic Affairs, about to look in my direction. Having relived this life, he was the last person I wanted to face right now. In a panic, I buried my face against Tyrone's chest. Tyrone's body stiffened. I pressed my head against his torso, silently praying Zach hadn't noticed us, hadn't noticed me. In my previous life, I had been so besotted with Zach that I'd caused my parents' tragic deaths. After losing my parents, I threw myself into my studies with renewed determination. When it came time to choose universities, he said I had no close relatives left in this world, and he worried I might be bullied at another school with no one to help me. He claimed he'd been eating and sleeping poorly, wishing he could protect me closely, and regretted not having the chance. Moved by his words, I abandoned my own choices and applied to the same university as him. He jumped for joy on the spot, vowing to treat me well for life. However, despite our plans to pursue postgraduate studies together, he secretly arranged to return to his hometown for work. When I discovered his deception, we had our first explosive argument. He knelt on the ground begging for my forgiveness, saying it was his dream and what he wanted most was my unconditional support. After 3 days and nights of agonizing, I ultimately gave up my postgraduate ambitions and followed him back to his hometown. In our second year of work, his mother fell gravely ill and became bedridden. I quit my job to care for her full-time until she passed away. Yet the man for whom I had sacrificed my entire youth and given up everything to follow, on the very day of his career success, escorted a wealthy heiress by the arm and told me I wasn't good enough for him, throwing me out on the street. I hysterically demanded to know why he hadn't said I wasn't good enough when we first started dating in school or when we were choosing universities. And how did he respond? Dating you was just to get your spot in the gifted class, to pull you down and take your place. Pity that didn't work out. As for university choices, wasn't that all your own decision? Did I hold a knife to your throat and force you? Back then, I wasn't good enough for you, so I schemed to drag you down to my level. But now, unfortunately, you're the one who's not good enough for me. 10 years of mutual dependence, only to be repaid with such cold-blooded cruelty. My heart was filled with bitterness. The day before his wedding was the anniversary of my parents' deaths. On my way back from the cemetery, someone covered my mouth and nose, then threw me off the bridge spanning the river. I vaguely heard the assailant say the client feared I would cause a scene at the wedding and ruin his prospects, so I had to be quietly disposed of. Wedding, prospects, these words could only point to one person. Never did I imagine that fate would send me back to the starting point, giving me a chance to choose again. The 16-year-old boy stood tall, like a young oak tree growing strong, perfectly enveloping me within his protective embrace. I felt both nervous and uneasy, even prepared to be pushed away and face Zach Welland alone. But Tyrone Wakefield didn't do that. He's gone, Tyrone's voice came from above after a while. I'm sorry, I stepped back, retreating from his embrace. The tip of my nose seemed to still linger with the fresh, pleasant scent of the young man. I couldn't help but blush. Agnes, are you still there? My mom's anxious call came through the speaker. Just had something to deal with, I glanced at the time and replied hastily, Mom, I've got class soon, I've got to go. Take care of yourself and Dad. Hanging up the phone, I felt the few coins in my pocket and looked at Tyrone. Tyrone, could you please help me ask the form tutor for leave? Although my mom was fine now, I still wanted to go home to check on her personally. Tyrone was silent for several seconds before finally nodding coldly. Thank you. I handed his phone back to him and turned to run towards the school gate. As I passed him, I whispered a soft I'm sorry. In my previous life, I couldn't stand his aloof and arrogant attitude, and I treated him terribly. Even after being scolded, when I saw him coming out of the room next to the Office of Academic Affairs, I assumed he had reported my puppy love to the school and lashed out at him. Until his life faded away that summer, I still owed him an apology. Back home, I didn't want to disturb my parents, so I quietly hid near the house. Only after seeing them both safely home did I catch the last bus back to school. As the bus started, I caught a glimpse of a figure that looked like Tyrone, but when I looked closely, there was nothing there. That evening, back in the dormitory, my roommate congratulated me on missing the afternoon maths pop quiz and asked where I'd been. I couldn't say much, only telling her I had some personal matters to attend to. She casually mentioned that the class representative, Tyrone Wakefield, wasn't there in the afternoon either. I thought of the figure I saw in the evening but dismissed it as impossible. After lights out, lying in my top bunk, I tried to make sense of this chaotic day. No matter the final outcome, I wanted to give an explanation to my past self and my parents. From today onwards, I wanted to walk a completely different path in life. On the way back from study hall, my boyfriend Zach Welland angrily blocked my path. "Agnes Fairfax, do you think I'm not good enough to meet your parents?" he demanded. I stared at him blankly, unable to speak for a long time. In my past life, he had been by my side through the most difficult decade. He should have been the person closest to me. But now, facing him, all I could think of was his shameless expression when he said he wasn't good enough for me, so he had to bring me down to his level. How could you think that? I forced myself to comfort him, suppressing my disgust. "I want to introduce you to my parents too, it's just not the right time yet." "Then how do you explain the Cambridge thing?" he pressed aggressively. I cleverly deflected. "It's just an empty promise, don't take it seriously." "I suppose." He finally relaxed. My smile cooled a few degrees, but I said nothing. "Agnes, my grades aren't as good as yours. You won't look down on me, will you?" Zach's eyebrows drooped, his tone softening slightly. "Of course not." I smiled at him coyly. "If I looked down on you, I wouldn't have made you my boyfriend, would I?" His eyebrows lifted, a hint of pride appearing. "I knew you loved me the most." "Of course I love you, but I've signed a commitment now." I changed the subject, pretending to be troubled. "I must study hard from now on. If my scores end up much higher than yours, you won't blame me, will you?" The smile froze on his face. I wrung my hands. If my parents find out my grades have slipped, they'll surely come make a scene at school. "I can't bear for you to suffer that embarrassment. Can you understand?" "I understand." He forced a smile, though it looked more like a grimace. "The school is watching me closely now." I delivered another blow. "Zach, from today on, we'll have to reduce our time together." It was an indirect breakup, and I knew he could hear it. A flash of viciousness appeared in his eyes, gone in an instant. I pretended not to notice his negative emotions, smiling brightly at him. "Once we're at university, we can be together openly. I'll try." He ran off as if escaping. I watched his retreating figure, barely holding back my laughter. In this life, I would not only humiliate him with my grades, but also ensure he received his just desserts. Otherwise, how could I quell the hatred from my past life? Returning to school, I initially struggled to keep up with the teacher's pace. To avoid falling behind, I used my free time to study intensively, making up for the knowledge I had missed. Walking around, I was either reciting vocabulary or memorizing equations and other key points. With all my energy consumed by studying, I turned into a walking learning machine. One Saturday afternoon, Tyrone Wakefield slipped me a note, asking me to go to the Office of Academic Affairs. I thought the head of academics wanted to have a word with me again, so I went there feeling anxious. To my surprise, when I arrived at the office, the head wasn't there. I only saw Tyrone. When he handed me a thermos flask, I was stunned for a long while. "What's this about?" I asked. He cleared his throat softly, his fist lightly pressed against his lips. "Your mom asked me to give this to you." I raised my eyebrows in surprise. No wonder the thermos flask looked familiar. "Where is she?" I peered out of the window. "Don't look, she's gone," Tyrone said sternly. I blinked at him. "Did she say anything?" He looked a bit uncomfortable and averted his gaze. "She said that on the night you called, you dreamed of crying and saying you wanted Wellington steak. She's been worried ever since, so she made it for you on her day off and brought it here." I felt a lump in my throat before I even started eating. "Thanks," I said, clearing space on the desk and eagerly opening the thermos flask. As soon as I lifted the lid, the distinctive aroma of Wellington steak wafted out. Tyrone turned to leave. "Where are you going?" I looked up, surprised. He was a man of few words. "To eat." I glanced at the size of the thermos flask and the amount of food. It was enough for both of us. My mom had even thoughtfully provided 2 sets of cutlery. "Why don't you join me?" I invited him. "No need, I'll go to the canteen," he said, not stopping as he reached for the door. "Come on, you've already helped me by bringing the food," I said, quickly blocking the door and grinning at him. After my enthusiastic invitation and persistent persuasion, Tyrone gave in. And then I successfully won over Tyrone with one meal. Later, whenever I encountered problems I couldn't solve no matter how hard I tried, I would shamelessly go to him for help. With a determined spirit, my grades began to improve steadily. Suddenly, the school's notice board caused a stir. Rumor had it that there was a love letter posted there, addressed to Tyrone Wakefield, signed with my name. When it came to Tyrone Wakefield, Mr. Cargill was absolutely fuming. This time, he didn't bother with the humane approach of calling us in separately during lunch break for individual scoldings. Instead, he summoned both Tyrone and me directly to the Office of Academic Affairs. Agnes Fairfax, you've changed your target rather quickly, haven't you? Care to explain? He irritably tapped the desk. Beneath his hand was a pink letter, with handwriting eerily similar to mine. The sight made my heart race. I had a gut feeling this had something to do with Zach Welland. In my previous life, I'd witnessed him hiring someone to forge handwriting. But now, I had no evidence to prove he was capable of such a thing, let alone link him to this letter. A lady's revenge can wait 10 years, but the pressing matter was to overcome this immediate hurdle, even if it meant making a scene. Sir, may I copy it out? You could compare the handwriting then. I glanced at the love letter that looked suspiciously like my handiwork, speaking in a serious tone. No need, I've already compared it with your coursework. Mr. Cargill, clearly still angry, flatly refused my suggestion. Comparing with coursework only matches individual letters. If I copy it out, you can compare all the details. That would be more fair and objective, wouldn't it? I continued to reason calmly. Mr. Cargill wasn't buying it. Faking details isn't hard. I don't trust you. I was starting to get a headache. I couldn't very well snatch it from him, could I? This was tricky. Tyrone stepped forward, brushed Mr. Cargill's hand aside, and handed me the letter. Ignore him, just write it out first. I was startled by this bold move and glanced at Mr. Cargill. He let out a cold snort but said nothing. After copying a few lines, I felt thoroughly uncomfortable. Although the handwriting on the paper was similar to mine, it was excessively sentimental. I felt like retching even without putting myself in the writer's shoes. Handwriting can be forged, but a person's writing habits are hard to change, I said, placing the two sheets side by side after finishing. Overall, the handwriting style in these two letters looks similar, but the impression they give is clearly different. Moreover, my writing is casual, and the same character often appears in several different forms. But in this letter, I held up the pink one, the same character is written identically each time, obviously an intentional imitation. The anger on Mr. Cargill's face had subsided a bit, but he still wasn't ready to let us go. Tyrone picked up the sheet I had just written and handed it to Mr. Cargill, impatiently saying, "Smell it." Mr. Cargill looked bewildered. "What do you mean?" Then he sniffed it hard and said, "There's a faint scent, but I can't quite place it." I quietly raised my own hand and sniffed, beginning to understand Tyrone's intention. Tyrone picked up the pink letter and handed it to Mr. Cargill. "Now smell this one." This time, Mr. Cargill sniffed it carefully before commenting, "This one's quite fragrant too." "Do they smell the same?" Tyrone asked him. Mr. Cargill shook his head. "Agnes always uses rose-scented hand cream. Everything she touches carries a rose fragrance, but this letter clearly doesn't smell of roses." Tyrone changed tack. "We just need to find the owner of this scent, and the problem will be solved." I glanced at Tyrone Wakefield and quietly took a step back. I had always used rose-scented hand cream, but how did he notice that? Mr. Cargill, the head of academic affairs, seemed unconvinced. "So what?" "So," Tyrone chuckled softly, "anyone with sense knows it wasn't her." I swallowed silently. He was implying that Mr. Cargill lacked common sense. As we were leaving, Tyrone expressed hope that Mr. Cargill would quickly find the real culprit. Mr. Cargill glared at me and crumpled up the love letter I had copied, tossing it in my direction. However, Tyrone intercepted the paper ball mid-flight. "Is it really okay to bully an old man like this?" I covered my head, feeling anxious about Mr. Cargill's intelligence. The corner of his lips curled into a smile. Well, he is my uncle after all. The love letter incident was blown out of proportion, only to be quietly resolved. Whoever posted that love letter on the school notice board clearly intended to create a rift between Tyrone and me, keeping us apart. If I had gone along with the perpetrator's intentions, I would have been the only one to lose out. I felt guilty for involving Tyrone in this mess. But I had made up my mind. Even if it cost me everything, I would make sure he got into university. With a 2-day holiday ahead, I cheerfully headed home, thermos flask in hand. As it was the weekend, both my parents were there, and I indulged in their company for a long while. They teased me, saying I'd become so clingy after just a month apart. I hugged them without a word. For them, it was a month. For me, it felt like a lifetime. After dinner, Dad cleared the table while Mum took me to the balcony for some fresh air. Somehow, the conversation turned to Tyrone Wakefield. Mum thought I had borrowed a phone from a teacher, only to discover on the day she brought me Wellington steak that it belonged to a male student. What's wrong with a male student? He's the top of our class. I borrowed his phone simply because he was the only one who had one to lend. I said, thinking quickly. It's normal for top students to receive some special treatment. That boy seems nice, and I'm not old-fashioned, Mum said earnestly. But I hope you'll focus on your studies rather than romance right now. Tyrone and I are just classmates, really. Besides, even if I fancied him, he wouldn't be interested in me, I said, snuggling into Mum's embrace. Mum, don't worry. Your daughter's heart is set on studying, I promise. After a lifetime of hardships, all I want now is to get into a good university and write my own brilliant future. Mother couldn't help but smile. Just give it your all and leave no regrets. Yes, ma'am. I'll complete the mission, I said, putting on a mock-serious face. Mom and I burst out laughing together. Over these 2 days, I didn't make excuses to go out on dates with Zach Welland like I did in my past life, nor did I spend every spare moment solving problems and reading books. Instead, I devoted all my time to being with my parents. I only told them the good things about school, not wanting them to worry about me. Mom thought I was acting strange and would occasionally nag, always managing to steer the conversation back to my studies. In my past life, I never had the patience to listen when she brought up studying. Now, as I listen to her nag, my heart is full of gratitude. There are some regrets I don't want to experience a second time. This long-awaited family reunion, lasting just 2 days, had completely rejuvenated me. As I threw myself back into my studies, I was brimming with enthusiasm. In the exams at the end of November, I reclaimed my position as third in the entire school. After the results were announced, I encountered Mr. Cargill, the head of the Office of Academic Affairs, on my way. His eyes were filled with affection as he looked at me. It was more than I could bear. I quickly said hello and then ran off. 2 days later, Zach Welland asked a classmate to pass on a message, inviting me to meet at our usual spot after the evening study session. After some consideration, I decided to bring my voice recorder to the meeting. Agnes Fairfax, have you been secretly dating Tyrone Wakefield? Zach Welland's tone was hostile from the start. I raised an eyebrow. Wasn't the love letter incident already cleared up? Where did you hear these rumors from? I heard you've been asking him for help with your studies quite often. I never realized you could be so shameless, he began to speak recklessly. Should I be asking you instead? I was thoroughly irritated. I'd love to ask you, but your grades. I stopped there, but I no longer concealed my disgust for him. You broke up with me because you'd already found someone else. He looked like he was about to explode with anger. Don't put it so crudely. I smiled provocatively. Isn't it human nature to admire the strong? It's your own fault for being so weak. It seems that love letter did you quite a favor. What a miscalculation on my part, he said sarcastically. Seeing him bring up the letter on his own, I had an idea. I didn't write that letter. I'm not childish enough to do something like that, I pretended to be angry and upset. My name is still posted at the Office of Academic Affairs. Whoever forged that letter is truly despicable. You couldn't do it, so I did it for you. How about that? Wasn't the handwriting convincingly similar? He said smugly. I was genuinely shocked, not out of fear, but surprise. I had thought it would take more effort to get the truth out of him, but he admitted it so easily. Zach, why would you do this to me? I channeled my inner drama queen, clutching my chest and taking a step back. Didn't you say you liked me? If you liked me, why would you try to frame me like this? You actually believed that lie? He sneered. Want to guess why this issue won't die down? I had a vague idea. Don't tell me it was you again? Of course it was. He had the look of a villain who'd just succeeded. Agnes, to be honest, I'm far more popular than you are. Let me tell you something else, he said with a wicked grin. I was also the one who anonymously reported you to the Office of Academic Affairs for dating. I was so shocked my mouth fell open. I couldn't believe he was willing to sacrifice himself just to bring me down. Zach, if you dislike me so much, why did you even date me? I pointed at him accusingly. Why? He looked down his nose at me. It was all for your spot in the gifted class. But your grades aren't even close to the admission standard. Even if I get kicked out, are you sure you'd be able to get in? I asked the question that had been puzzling me for a long time. His pupils contracted slightly. That's none of your concern now. You've seen my results. I shook my head gently, looking regretful. I'm afraid your scheme has failed. Agnes Fairfax, you don't think I put all my eggs in one basket, do you? I was momentarily at a loss for words. How had I never noticed before that he was such a master of time management? You girls are so easy to fool. Just a few words of affection and you're willing to be led by the nose. He looked smug. There are still 2 months left. If I can bring just one of you down, I'm sure to rise up. My stomach churned with disgust. If I couldn't feel good, I certainly didn't want to see him feeling pleased. I can't speak for others, but I truly want to thank you, I said, deliberately provoking him. Before, Tyrone Wakefield and I never had a chance to talk. It was because of the love letter incident that we became friends. The smile vanished from his face. Being with him is like opening a door to a new world. I finally understand that human intelligence can vary greatly. I lavished praise on Tyrone. This is all thanks to you. You're truly my great benefactor. Zach Welland's face darkened. And do you know why your carefully prepared love letter didn't work? I taunted again. He looked very displeased but still showed a thirsty for knowledge expression. Because they all believed in my innocence, I said righteously. Thanks to the school, thanks to the teachers. Zach's fists clenched. Of course, that's just my official statement. Do you want to know the truth? I continued to tease. Zach was so angry his eyes could have shot flames. The truth is, when it comes to Tyrone Wakefield, I deliberately lowered my voice, acting mysteriously. Mr. Cargill said that as long as it doesn't affect our grades, he can turn a blind eye. You've gone too far. He violently threw his maths textbook at me. I hadn't expected him to get physical and didn't dodge in time. But it was the middle of winter, and I was dressed warmly, so the book didn't hurt when it hit me. After throwing the book, Zach ran away clutching his head, still growling under his breath. In high spirits, I took out my voice recorder, saved the recording, and turned it off. Why didn't you dodge? A familiar voice suddenly came from beside me. I was caught off guard and froze. Tyrone Wakefield emerged from the shadows. You're back? I asked, struggling for conversation. He glanced at the voice recorder in my hand and gave a slight nod. How was the exam? I forced a smile. Not bad, he replied, his eyes twinkling. Given the disparity in human intelligence, as the strong one you admire, I can't afford to disappoint. With those words, I knew he had heard everything. The air was thick with awkwardness, and I wanted to flee. I was just trying to upset him earlier. I hope you don't mind. I don't, he paused before asking, how do you want to handle this? After pondering for a while, I looked up at him. Tyrone, can I ask you a favor? Go on, he said, maintaining his composure. Could you pretend you didn't hear or see anything today? I tucked the voice recorder back into my pocket and straightened my back, mustering the courage to ask. Even if I handed the recording to the school, Zach Welland would get off with a mere warning. But because of that love letter, I had become the laughingstock of the entire school, and Tyrone had been caught in the crossfire undeservedly. Not to mention all the past grievances between Zach and me. Now that I had a weapon in my hands, I was itching to use it to really stick it to Zach. So, I wanted to make the most of this recording, to get back at Zach as much as possible. Tyrone's eyebrow twitched. What are you planning to do? Just a bit of payback, I softened my tone, tugging at Tyrone's sleeve playfully. I promise I won't disrupt school order or cause any trouble for your uncle. Please. Disrupting order and causing trouble were exactly what I intended, I silently added to myself. Tyrone stared at me for a long time, his brow furrowed. Just as I was getting anxious, he finally nodded. The next day, under the pretense of buying toiletries, I left the school grounds. Then I spent a small fortune at an internet cafe, editing the audio into a version that was very much in my favor. That evening, during dinner time, I snuck into the school broadcasting studio, avoiding the CCTV cameras. I swiftly turned on the broadcasting equipment and played the recording through the loudspeakers. Once the recording finished, I quickly shut off the equipment and made my escape before anyone could arrive. Zach Welland became infamous. Maliciously forging love letters to tarnish classmates' reputations, deceiving their feelings, and even involving in scandalous affairs. The accusations were numerous, and he had become a notorious figure. I was summoned to the Office of Academic Affairs again. As a frequent visitor this year, I now had an incredibly thick skin. As soon as I entered, I voluntarily confessed to being privately intimidated by Zach. However, no matter how they interrogated me, I steadfastly claimed to be a victim, insisting I knew nothing about the school broadcasting studio incident. My mobile was confiscated by our form tutor, so they couldn't produce evidence of my recording. Unable to search my dormitory, they had to let it go. The incident had quite a negative impact. To be honest, I was constantly worried that Tyrone would expose me to his uncle. But the office's reaction indicated they remained unaware. Zach had also confronted me. I secretly pinched myself hard, managing to squeeze out 2 tears. Then, with tears streaming, I told him I truly knew nothing, which angered him so much he stormed off. Classmates who had previously stepped on me now came to apologize, saying they had misunderstood me. I immediately broke into pitiful sobs, decrying Zach's shameful behavior and expressing concern about potential future victims. Human nature doesn't stand up to scrutiny, everyone became wary. I had merely tossed a small pebble into a calm pond, and someone voluntarily stirred up the waters. Spurred on by an unknown force, Zach's case escalated from a moral issue to a legal one. Everyone signed a petition demanding his punishment. Under pressure, the school called Zach's parents and gave him a disciplinary record. I heard his mother's shrieks echoed through the sky that day. Tyrone never came forward to expose me. I'm not sure if it was my imagination, but after this incident, I always felt his gaze held a hint of fear. My grades became increasingly stable, never dropping again. Perhaps seeing my improved academic performance, the school let me off the hook. But Zach wasn't so lucky. He became a social pariah, which pleased me greatly. During the 8-day Christmas break, I took a stroll near Zach's house with a pocket full of fruit-flavored sweets. With my pure and sweet appearance and colorful sweets, I attracted the attention of a group of children. As they gathered around me eating sweets, I pointed at Zach's house and recounted the older brother's misdeeds at school. Over and over, tirelessly. They were naive about these matters but curious. I took the opportunity to answer their many questions. Before leaving, I cheerfully reminded them to establish correct values and never to emulate the older brother from that house. They happily waved goodbye to me. After the holiday, I heard from classmates that Zach came to class with bruises on his face. They say shame can motivate people, but a person's inherent DNA doesn't change. Based on my understanding of Zach, carrying such shame, he would only panic and eventually go astray. As I stepped into the exam hall for the second time in my life, I felt surprisingly calm. The exam went as well as I had hoped. Back at the dormitory, I heard that Zach Welland had been caught cheating with a wireless receiver and was banned from taking exams for 5 years. This news filled me with satisfaction. While I was taking photos with my roommates, we heard screams from the girls outside. Before I could wonder why, the door burst open. It was Tyrone Wakefield. I raised an eyebrow. Aren't boys not allowed in the girls' dorms? If parents can come in, why can't I? He retorted. I suddenly remembered that the dorms were open to visitors today. Because you're not a parent, I teased with a grin. Ignoring my joke, he asked, "Do you need any help?" I pointed to my desk. "Could you pack my books and take them downstairs?" After we finished packing, Tyrone offered to drive me home. I had quite a lot of luggage, including 2 suitcases, so I didn't refuse. As I was fumbling for my keys in my bag, Tyrone walked confidently towards my house. I grabbed his arm, glancing ahead. "How do you know where I live?" He coughed lightly, his eyes darting around. "Last August." I understood immediately. "Why didn't you admit it then?" He shoved the bags he was carrying into my arms, mumbling, "I've got to go, see you later." With that, he strode away quickly. I stood there for a moment, then burst out laughing. That night, I had a dream. I saw Tyrone sinking into bottomless waters, his eyes closed. I tried to call out his name, but no sound came out. I woke up with a start. Fragments of memories began to piece together, and I recalled a long-forgotten incident. That summer holiday, someone's dog had fallen into the river. They found Tyrone playing basketball and, fearing he wouldn't help, lied that their sister had fallen in. Believing a life was at stake, Tyrone jumped into the river to save her. He dove in and out of the water several times but couldn't find anyone. Eventually, exhausted, he was swept away by the current. The person who had called for help, realizing the gravity of the situation, quietly slipped away without even calling for help for Tyrone. Tyrone lost his life, and his body was never found. Try as I might, I couldn't remember the exact time of the incident, only that it was in the afternoon. The next morning, I texted Tyrone asking where he was. After a while, he replied that he was playing basketball in the sports hall. The outdoor courts were empty, so I went inside. Tyrone was darting around the court in a t-shirt and shorts, his movements agile and his jumps impressive, a side of him I'd never seen before. He looked startled when he saw me, and I greeted him with a smile. During the break, the boys around us joked that I was another girl with a crush on Tyrone Wakefield. Surprisingly, before I could say anything, Tyrone's ears turned red. This summer, I've been keeping a close eye on Tyrone Wakefield. Tyrone has been considerate enough to report his whereabouts to me daily. The city library, school, basketball court, supermarket, or staying at home, his life routines are simple. In mid-June, the city was hit by several days of heavy rain. On the day the skies cleared, Tyrone invited me to an art exhibition, saying he'd wait for me at the sports center. I leisurely pedaled my bicycle towards the sports center. Although it had just rained, the temperature rose quickly. The humidity mixed with heat left me feeling listless. When I arrived at the sports center, I couldn't find Tyrone, so I gave him a call. He answered fairly quickly, said he was busy, and that he'd call me back shortly before hanging up. Just before the call ended, I faintly heard a female voice saying something about helping to save someone. The word save nearly made my soul leave my body. I tried calling again, but Tyrone didn't answer, so I quickly cycled towards the river. Before I even reached the riverbank, I saw Tyrone sitting on the railing, about to jump into the river. The river had swollen from the recent downpours, its current alarmingly strong. The suffocating feeling from my past life's drowning instantly engulfed me. "Tyrone, stop!" I shouted, accelerating towards him. But my bike accidentally hit a roadside bollard, losing control and crashing to the ground. My leg stung fiercely. I looked down. I was wearing shorts today, and a large patch of skin from my knee to my calf was scraped off, blood already oozing out. Tyrone's gaze wavered between me and the river, but he still seemed intent on jumping in. Ignoring the pain, I got up and ran towards him like a madwoman, shouting for him to wait. While he was momentarily distracted by my leg injury, I rushed straight to him and held onto him tightly. His body radiated heat, and I could smell a faint scent of sweat. He pushed me away, his face flushed. "Someone's fallen into the river. I need to save them first, then I'll take you to the hospital. No one's fallen in, don't go into the water." I cried, tears streaming down my face, unsure if it was from pain or panic. As I cried, I could feel my nose starting to run. She's lying to you, don't believe her. I buried my face against him, my voice muffled. It's her dog that fell in, not her sister. Tyrone, please don't go into the water. My voice was nasal and choked with sobs. I was rambling, but I absolutely refused to let go. You've just arrived and don't understand the situation. Don't accuse her wrongly. Tyrone still tried to push me away. Look, she hasn't dared to say anything. I stopped crying and turned to the girl standing silently nearby. You tell us yourself, was it your sister who fell into the river, or was it your dog? But when I saw the girl's face clearly, I was stunned. It was Zach Welland's cousin, the one who always did whatever Zach said. And as far as I knew, she never kept any pets and didn't even like dogs. The girl stammered, unable to speak. I pointed at her nose angrily. A dog is a dog, a person is a person. How can you not tell the difference at your age? Tyrone's gaze scanned the river surface for a long time before finally turning to the girl. He remained silent, seemingly waiting for an explanation. The girl bit her lip without speaking, her expression very annoyed. Dogs can swim. It will find a way out and go home by itself. Stop trying to harm people here, I said huffily. Mind your own business. The girl shoved me hard and ran away. My leg was already injured and unsteady. Her push made me lose balance, and I was about to fall into the river. Tyrone quickly grabbed me and pulled me away from the riverbank. Agnes, are you all right? His voice was trembling as he spoke. I'm not lying to you. There really isn't anyone in the water. Will you believe me? I looked up at him, my voice choked. He picked me up and strode towards the main road. I'll take you to the hospital first. Oh, I responded, looking down at my calf. It was a bloody mess, a ghastly sight. I injured my leg. Having never experienced much hardship in my life, even a minor flesh wound made me incredibly whiny. My parents both laughed at and indulged me. Since they had to work, Tyrone Wakefield took care of me in their place. He asked how I knew he had been tricked. I said I was all-knowing and all-powerful. He just smiled without pressing further. What angered me was that there were no security cameras where Tyrone had been deceived. The girl adamantly denied asking Tyrone for help and accused me of slandering her. Without evidence, the matter was dropped. Unable to vent my anger, I took it out on Tyrone, calling him gullible. Not only did he not get upset, but he also praised me as the smartest, most beautiful, and upright girl in the world, saying how fortunate it was that I was there. I was easily swayed by his flattery and couldn't resist his sweet talk. The place where Tyrone was about to rescue someone wasn't far from the bridge where I drowned in my past life. In other words, our final resting places were the same in our previous lives. On the day I received my acceptance letter, Mr. Cargill asked me to give a speech at the graduation dinner. I shyly suggested that Tyrone should do it instead. He coughed awkwardly and said Tyrone had mentioned he'd said everything he could over the years and volunteered to give me the opportunity. I was stunned. Zach Welland didn't attend the graduation dinner. Rumor had it that due to his tarnished reputation and being banned from exams for 5 years, his family couldn't show their faces. They sold all their property and moved away. It seemed they would never return, which made me feel a bit better. As for who took over the multi-million-pound redevelopment project 8 years later, I didn't inquire. I only hoped to never see him again for the rest of my life. On the first day of university, Tyrone and I embarked on our new journey hand in hand. The scenery outside the window rapidly receded, while more beautiful landscapes continuously appeared ahead. Agnes Fairfax, shall we give it a try? Tyrone suddenly spoke up. Sure, I replied promptly. He was taken aback by my quick response. You're not even asking what we're trying? To be together, of course. I winked at him flirtatiously. My boyfriend, may I kiss you now? He stared at me wide-eyed in shock. Ignoring his resistance, I happily leaned in and gave him a quick peck. His face turned bright red, and his whole body stiffened. I pinched his cheek and rested my head on his shoulder with a smile. In 2 lifetimes, at the very beginning, I thought love was more important than my future, so I repeatedly gave up opportunities for love. When I left this world filled with regret, I suddenly realized that my future was more important than love. It's only now that I've discovered the right person will always be part of my future, walking with me towards the light.